but I'm going to try and demonstrate to you as quickly as possible how I would infill this nail. Normally you would start off by sanitizing your client's hands with something like the One. I've done that already with mine, washed my hands too. I'm going to go in with my Gelinator XXC. This is a specialty carbide bit, so it works best at high speed. So I'm going to pop it at 35. You can use it on a range between 30 and 35,000 RPMs. So I'm just going to go straight in and start by removing that color. The extra coarse gelinator is the bit that I would recommend if you're generally doing acrylic or resin dipping systems. It does tend to cut through product quite quickly. It also, you'll notice, because its teeth protrude straight out, it won't give you a smooth cut. So that's why it tends to work a little bit better for your debulking. I wouldn't use this bit as a finishing bit, just so that you know, but it works beautiful for debulking when you're performing infills, or debulking if you had to soak off. If you wanted to use it for finishing, you would still have to go over with, I'd say, a file to smooth that out. So when we're performing an infill, you want to make sure that you're debulking it and rebalancing it. So that's why I'm looking at it from the side, because I want to make sure that I'm rebalancing that apex. I don't want to take off product unnecessarily, so I won't take off a lot of product in this area here, because I would just have to fill that up again. So we want to rebalance and infill, but we don't want to go down to a super thin layer when we're infilling. We'd only really do that when we want to reapply a whole new extension. I'm going to go in with my cuticle pusher and push back the skin folds. So we just want to make sure that we're lifting the skin off away. We're scraping any dead skin cells off. And then I'm going to go in with my Cuticle Prep Pro bit, which is this one here. And this is a grinding bit, so we tend to use it at slower speeds. So I have that on about a 5,000 RPM. So you would use it on anywhere between a 2 and a 7. I'm going to use it on a 5 because there's a lot of skin on this nail here. You can also use it if there's any little bits of product on the nail that you want to remove. So I have a little bit of product here that was too close for me to use with my gelinator. You can go in with your cuticle prep to remove that. I have my bit in forward. I'm just going to twist it onto the skin itself so I can lift that skin up. So when I'm doing this on myself, it's an angle thing. Same with the client, you would just change the angle of your ear file. So what that does is it just lifts the skin up off of the nail. Now I'm going to change it to the reverse to do the opposite side. If I maintained the forward position, I would be pulling the skin down towards the nail, which is not what we want. That's why the other side of my nail, or the other side of my skin folds, I tend to do in the opposite direction. Then I like to just grab my purple sanding sponge and give the rest of the area a quick buff so that I'm removing the shine on that regrowth area, and like just making sure there's no shine on the rest of the nail. I just find that that's a lot faster than trying to prep that whole area with my Cuticle Prep Pro. I do have a little bit of white left on here that I want to just remove, so I'm just grabbing my Cuticle Prep Pro and I'm just giving that a quick tap. fairly happy with that. Give that a good dust, make sure that we're removing it. So you'll notice that I've lifted the skin off away from the nail plate, and I have a little bit of dead skin that's just kind of loose. So I'm just going to grab my Russian cuticle scissors and just give that a quick nip. You can use cuticle nippers too, you don't have to use the cuticle scissors. It's personal preference. Then I go in with the one and a manicure brush just to sanitize and chemically dehydrate. Wait for that to dry. If you've ever seen me, I always like to use my monomer mender dispenser for my acrylic. I'll be using my number 8 brush, but you can use any of the 3 that we have. I'm going to go in with a coat of nail prep. So nail prep does helps to sanitize and dehydrate, but it also helps to balance the pH of the nail, and that's why I love using it when it comes to doing things like this. Okay, and then we're going to go in with a coat of sticky bond. Now if you were to use elastic under your acrylic after you've applied your coat of sticky bond, sorry, I just want to make sure. With sticky bond, we want to make sure that we never ever touch the skin, that we're only applying it to the natural nail. So I take a little bit of care when applying my sticky bond. If you were to apply elastics, you can just now go in with a very thin coat of elastic either over the whole extension or just in that regrowth area. So elastic is really great to use under acrylics, hard gels, poly type gels, especially for clients that struggle with lifting. So you can go in and do that. I'm going to omit that at this stage because I'm generally fine with my acrylics using sticky bond as my primer. But you have that option for clients that do struggle with lifting. All right. Next, we're going to just go in. So I always like to prep my brush, make sure that it's nice and clean. Make sure that I burp it, that there's no air in it. And if you are starting to use a new color, so you're used to doing acrylics a lot, but you get a new color, every pigment affects the way that acrylic will polymerize differently. So it is a good idea just when you have a new one to grab it, pick up a few beads, pop it down, see how it polymerizes before you go in and apply it to a client's fingers or your own, just because you don't want to have to, chase it and fix it up. So just pick up a few beads and look at it, make sure that it's polymerizing the way you want it to, and then go in and do your application once you're happy with it. Alright, so I'm going to go in. I want to pick up a medium-sized bead. I want it to be medium wet. If your room's hot or cold, or just adjust it by offloading or making sure that you're using a little bit more liquid, whichever works best for you. Sorry, I'm talking too much. So that one's probably a little bit dry for my liking, but that's okay. Make sure my next one's a little bit wetter. So with my cuticle bead, I always angle my finger slightly down so that gravity helps me create a nice gradual ascend up to my apex. I want to make sure that I don't touch the skin with monomer at all. Just to fix my little bump that I created, I'm just gonna go down. Now, the big trick with infilling your Vogues with acrylic is you need to make sure that you cover the entire enhancement with a thin coat of acrylic. If you don't, you might have a little bit of a flex differentiation, and that can lead to surface breakdown. So just make sure that you go in and just do a thin coat of acrylic over the whole entire nail. Now you will notice that I don't do like a 3 bead or a 1 bead or whatever method. I do whatever the nail requires on the day. So if it's a hot day and I need to adjust it a little bit, like today, that first bead went on probably a little bit too dry, then I just adjust it. The aim is to try and get that final application as close to your final shape as possible, so that we have as little filing as possible. That just helps us with our application and our filing and our speed of service. So I do take a little bit of time when it comes to actually building my product, so that I don't have to spend so much time filing. So that is blush. How beautiful is blush? And that is how I do an acrylic infill over a Vogue extension. And once it's set up, you can then just go in and finish file the way you normally would. And if you do use your file, make sure your e-file, make sure you give it a quick buff afterwards so that it's not too smooth and your gel polish has an etched surface to adhere to, or a buffed surface to adhere to. But yes, that is the basic technique.